University of Alaska, Montana State getting started here. A lot of action going on so far, Kurt.
Montana coming out of the gate quickly and coming right across that obstacle field. We've got rocks and craters in the middle of that obstacle field. Montana's like, what rocks? What craters? I didn't see any. Alaska has a very high robot, so it can just drive right over and just straddle those obstacles.
The Alaska robot reminds me of one of our crawler transporters, the way it sits up like that.
Up high with the tracks.
Yeah.
I think the teams are sensitive about how low their digging mechanism is on the Alaska robot because they made sure that they got it to one side of that rock. Now, let's see how they deal with this next rock. They've got to get it to the side of that rock also. Looks like that's exactly what they did.
So is the playing field inside the arena smoothed out or graded after each run for the next team that comes in, or do they go with how it's left from the previous run?
The judges reset the arenas after each run to try and make it as fair as possible to these teams. Now the Montana State robot on the right is digging. What they have is a bucket that they've lowered on the end of an arm down into the soil. And what they did was they moved their tracks backwards to try and pull that bucket into the soil. Now, as the bucket lifts up, we'll be able to see if there's anything in it. There's something in it because I can see it falling out. Oh, here we go. Alaska spinning up their bucket ladder system. There's the dump, the first dump from Montana State University coming back to the lander in order to deposit everything that they've just dug. Now these robots have to dig pretty deep in order to get to the gravel and the rocks that have been hidden underneath the topsoil.
And I assume too that they had to have some pretty decent motors inside of the robots to carry the additional weight back to the judges' scoring area as well.
That's true. These students need to take into consideration the dry weight and the fully loaded potential weight of these robots when they're designing them. So all of their mechanisms have to be able to handle the entire operational life cycle of these robots, which includes going back with a very, very full load of this crushed volcanic rock and hopefully a whole lot of those rocks and gravel.
This might be a crazy guess, but I'm thinking maybe Alaska used their robot and practiced in the snow. I would assume that they dug up a little snow up there in Alaska to make sure we're running and tested for a regolith.
Yeah, you can see the Alaska robot. It got bound up a little bit as it plunged its digger down into the dirt. Hopefully that didn't break anything. Oh, and on the Alaska robot in the lower left, you can see, what I think they're doing? I think they're just getting rid of the top layer. Okay, there might be some rocks there on the Montana State side. You can see the judge pulling rocks off of that screen, that sieve. So in the upper left of the screen, at the top of the ladder bucket system, that looked a little bit violent. There you go. At the top of the ladder bucket system, you can see the buckets are dumping into this white box. And so that white box is going to hold the material, and then when they dump, that white box actually lifts up and the material spills out. Now Alaska's going pretty deep. Yeah. This is impressive. Yeah. You can see every time they get stuck, they have to raise up a little bit in order to get it going again. And that's because this material is not easy to dig in. This material resists your digging forces. So if you try to dig, if you try to push down too hard, it's totally going to bind up your robot, unless your robot is seriously, seriously overpowered, which most of these teams, they just can't overpower their robots like that. Because the whole point is to make your robot as lightweight as possible and use as little power as possible. And so this entire competition is a trade-off. Everything about this competition is a trade-off that these students have to figure out.
I will be very interested to see, after looking at this hole that Alaska just created, how they get their regolith back into the judging scoring area.
That is a good hole, and speaking of, it looks like they're going back. And simultaneously, Montana State robot is coming back. This is the second run for both of these teams. So both of these teams are hopeful that they can get a significant amount, like more than a kilogram of this gravel deposited into the hopper. So Montana State on the right is dumping again. I believe that's their third trip.
I think you're right.
Now Alaska stopped for a moment. Not sure why. There they go again. Oh, look at the lower left camera. The Alaska robot, the track seems to be a little bit off in some way. Now the students can see this video in the lower left. The students cannot see the video in the upper left.
So along with constructing the robot, we have to have operators who are knowledgeable enough to manipulate these robots under these conditions and take advantage of any hazards, to be aware of hazards that might happen like this right now, which it looks like Alaska is dealing with.
So this Alaska team is very impressive. The driver figured out that it drives a lot better in one direction than the other. There's something that's causing that track to want to come off of its cogs. And rather than push it, the student tried to go in the other direction, and it worked. And so that student took all the way around the opposite direction that they needed to go in order to get out of that spot they were in. You can see that track just binding and then releasing and binding and releasing when you see it pop like that. I don't know if rocks are getting caught in it or what, but it's definitely causing some issues for this Alaska robot. They only have 2.5 minutes to get this load delivered to the hopper.
I'm nervous for them. I want to see them have something to submit to the judges. They have a lot of regular authority in their machine from the size of the hole we saw earlier, so I'm definitely pulling for them that they're able to turn something in.
Yes, they definitely dug a decent-sized hole. We need this robot. One of the tracks appears to not be moving anymore. Let's see if they can get it moving again in the last 2 minutes. It's moving just a little bit, but okay, come on out. So you can see the student is trying to release the far side of the robot by moving the near side of the robot. This is a very good driver. I'm a very good driver.
Do you have your CDL?
I stole that from a movie. That's a line from a movie. Up and down the driveway. All right. You're all too young to understand that movie reference. I do. Bringing that up, though, I do drive robots. Some of the work that I do is on robots. I'm a software guy, but I do work on some robots, software on some robots that NASA is designing and researching. And so because I'm in charge of the software, sometimes I do get to drive them. And that's the most fun part of my job. Look at those rocks on the Montana State side.
Wow.
That's the scoring gravel right there.
Wow. That's very impressive for Montana State.
Now, with a minute left, I'm not sure. Alaska hasn't given up, but time is getting very short for Alaska. Alaska's zooming in their cameras. There's the Alaska students in the lower left.
So
they've gone ahead and dumped. I guess they've given up getting to the hopper, and they're just going ahead and dumping their load right there. Hard to tell from this angle how much they just dumped and how much of that load was the rocks and the gravel that would have been scoring for them.
So it looks like we're going to have about 10 seconds left, and I don't think Alaska's going to make it in time. So,
yeah, let's give both of these teams a big round of applause. University of Alaska Fairbanks and Montana State University. Look at the body language from the Montana State team. They're happy. They're happy with that run. And honestly, Alaska should be happy with that run, even though they didn't get any scoring rocks into the hopper. they did really good. And that driver, kudos to that driver,